sorry for the delay. We're not, obviously, in light of what has happened, the flight cancellation, we won't make a statement, but go ahead and ask your questions.
Yes.
This is what all about.
Yeah, first of all, sorry for being late. I mean, hopefully it didn't take as long as the decision, but I'm here now. So.
You're a young guy. This has been like taking up a good chunk of your life, this battle. How does this feel?
I mean, it's been a big deal, right? So for the last 10 years, I've been fighting. It feels good to finally have the relief and the certainty of knowing that I don't have to fight anymore over this like basic rights that I've always felt were true. But I mean, it's been difficult. I mean, a lot of kind of anguish and stress, and so I feel really relieved.
If you don't live here, or maybe have no future plans to live here, tell us if you do. Why was it so important for you to fight for your citizenship?
Well, I mean, I do have future plans to live here. I mean, I do feel Canadian. I want a future in Canada. I mean, I'm not saying I will always be only in Canada. I mean, you know, who knows what the future will bring. But I do have the desire to be here. And it's also just important from a personal perspective. I mean, you have to understand, I grew up my entire childhood being Canadian, believing I was Canadian. Even when I was in the US and I eventually got an American citizenship through my parents, I didn't want an American citizenship. I was just happy to be Canadian. I remember as a kid asking them, oh, why do I need this other citizenship? You know, I'm Canadian. I like being Canadian. I mean, I speak French and speak English, and it's a really integral part of kind of my upbringing and my character.
What's your relationship with your parents now?
My relationship with my parents is all right. Of course, it was always difficult at the very beginning, going through all this kind of identity crisis and troubles. But I think we managed to kind of get past all this, and we have kind of a good relationship. And they've been understanding of my fight for my citizenship. I mean, they also enjoyed their time in Canada. I mean, even if it was part of their kind of lives to be Canadians, they really did like living here, and they support my beliefs and my feelings about my Canadian kind of heritage and upbringing. Did to me or did themselves? So that was, I understand their decisions now. They did what they did for patriotic reasons. I mean, they wanted to help their country, to fight for kind of, as they saw, peace and better understanding between the countries. And so, although I kind of have suffered through the result of all of this, I have an understanding of why they did what they did. Maybe, I've said previously, they, in their position, maybe shouldn't have had children, but that's not to say, you know, I'm not happy to be alive and be here. So,
Alexander, can you share with us?
I mean, his reaction is the same as mine. I mean, we've been in the same situation all this time. It's a huge relief for him, and kind of he's in this as much as I am. So he's, you know, over the moon and extremely happy.
Alexander, can you share with us a bit about looking back, what it was like when you learned that you weren't who you thought you were, your family wasn't who you thought they were, and would you call the time after that, until maybe recently, a bit of an identity crisis for yourself?
Well, first of all, I would say I am who I am. I mean, whatever you learn about your heritage, all these things, I don't feel defines you as a person. And that was kind of my ultimate conclusion. It was very difficult at first understanding, you know, who am I? Am I Russian? Am I Canadian? What does this kind of revelations mean to me? Ultimately, I kind of, through a lot of soul searching, came to the conclusion that, you know, my character defines me, my experiences define me, hence exactly my lifelong kind of, my life of being a Canadian is a big defining factor. And so that's the conclusion I drew from, you know, this identity crisis I had to face.
And where do you live now, and what are your plans?
So for the last years, I've been kind of bouncing around between different countries. It's been very difficult exactly looking for work. So I completed my education for my master's and my bachelor's in Europe. And since then, I was in different places, in the Middle East, in Asia. Of course, there's some places still I have had issues traveling to. So it's been difficult also with the reputation and all the coverage of my case and my parents' background. It hasn't been easy, and it's been very difficult, and I've suffered a lot as a result of this. So I've been, between many different countries trying to figure my life out.
When was the last time you were in Canada?
Last time I was in Canada was after the hearing. I spent some time here, exactly looking for work, spending some time, but of course it was difficult to plant immediate roots here and not knowing what the ultimate outcome would be. I mean, had I started working here permanently and then I received a negative decision, it would be that much more difficult. So I decided, while still looking for work, that it was best to delay it slightly.
So when was that?
Sorry?
So when was that? Roughly.
I believe it was 9 months ago.
So now to return, knowing that you're free to be here, it's all settled. How does that, tell us about that?
Well, like I said, it's a huge relief, right? I'm happy to be back in Canada, to be here without this constant kind of doubt over my head, with the ability to finally start putting some roots down again and be able to kind of build a new life out for myself. It's not going to happen right away. It's going to be taking some time, but I'm very relieved and I'm happy that I can move forward in my life and kind of put a lot of these problems behind me.
Alexander, if you don't mind, I ask about your future plans. If you don't mind sharing with us, I mean, do you plan to relocate here sometime soon and pursue employment? I mean, what are the steps now?
I mean, the steps are tied, I would say, to my career. It depends on my prospects. Like I said, it's been difficult to find work. If I can find a good opportunity here, then I'd be happy to move back to Canada.
And where do you currently reside? Like, where's your home?
Hard to say. Like I said, I've been moving around a lot.
But where did you just come from today, for example?
So I flew from Russia because I was unsure about my status. So if I had been in another country at the time of the decision, I didn't want my passport to be revoked and to be kind of deported from wherever I might be. That's why I flew in now, just right after the decision.
What kind of work do you do?
So I work in finance. I don't want to go too much into the details about that, but I studied finance and kind of have an interest in it.
What is it so difficult for you to find employment here? Is it because of the people just curious, don't trust you because your parents were spies?
No, I mean, I don't think people distrust me personally. I think people are a little bit worried about the association, right? So being so closely tied with all these stories of espionage and all this is not always something companies want to be associated with. Also, my status being kind of uncertain has been an issue in terms of determining the hiring status. If a company hires me and then I lose my citizenship, what does it mean for my employment?
What do you think this says about, the idea of birthright citizenship? I mean, it's been talked about in federal politics as well. The Prime Minister has said about, people convicted of acts of terrorism, or charged, I should say, that, if they're born here and this is their citizenship, we can't just take someone's citizenship away. That's not coming to you.
I mean, I would agree. I think citizenship is not just rights, but it's also obligations, and you have a duty to the country where you hold citizenship. And I think it's very dangerous to conflate criminal actions with citizenship. I mean, it's not a privilege the government decides to grant you. It's a right you have. And so if you do commit acts of terrorism or other things, you should be charged for them. But I don't think it should be directly tied to your citizenship.
Take it back just 10 years, 9 years. Did you have any inkling at all that
No. I mean, none whatsoever. I mean, the whole point is my parents kept me as far away as possible from anything related to Russia. I mean, I had traveled a lot, but I had never been to Russia. I had no idea.
So in that moment, what was that like?
I didn't believe it. So the first reactions were that it was like the FBI had the wrong house. Then I was thinking, then they finally told me and my brother that they were charged with acting as unlawful agents of a foreign nation. And I kind of thought maybe they had made a mistake with my father's consulting work, and that, just a sheer series of coincidences lined up in a way to make something. So I didn't believe it. It's only much later that I finally came to the realization that it was true. But yeah, obviously in this kind of circumstance, it's hard to make sure what's happening. I was just focused on kind of what I needed to do, and pushing everything about my identity to later once things had settled down a bit.
The FBI has said your brother did know. What do you say to that?
I mean, I think it's bullshit. Just the whole idea makes no sense. I mean, why would a person who grew up his whole life being Canadian and never setting foot in a country decide that, okay, I will just swear allegiance to a nation and risk my life and possibly, spend the rest of my life in prison, as my parents were facing, for a country he has no connection to? It doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense for my parents to have told him anything, because they would just be endangering him, endangering themselves. And I think, the allegations are just there to make me and my brother's lives more difficult. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to kind of put behind me. Some countries have seized the opportunity to kind of restrict me from traveling there. And it's been very difficult because it prohibits, career, my general sense of freedom. And so I really think these allegations are politically driven. And there's no proof, the allegations were first quoted in, I think, Washington Post. And they said, anonymous sources. I mean, you interpret that however you wish.
Alexander, can you clarify, so now you have your Canadian citizenship and also Russian citizenship? Do you
Yes.
have any other citizenship?
No, there's, at one point, I think it's mentioned in the case, I had American citizenship, but it was revoked, and because I had it through my parents, it's fine.
And you're 25 years old now?
Yes.
What do you have to say to spies who are currently engaged in espionage, especially when it comes to parenting?
I mean, okay, I'm not by any measure, a specialist in espionage, despite, having parents who were charged. I'm not really asking all these questions. I don't know operationally what goes on. I would say that it's probably very rare that any people working in this community have children, mostly because they're either under diplomatic cover, and at that point, kind of it's not as big of a risk. And in terms of deep cover spies, I have no idea. How many other people there might be, who knows.
So what did you miss most when you were kept outside of Canada?
So, some food. Definitely a lot of junk food and these kind of everyday pleasures. I missed also a little bit of kind of linguistic ease, right? I had to move to Russia and then to other countries where I didn't speak the language. And it's not easy. Every time you go do something, you have to think it over first. So it was nice. It's nice to be back in a country where I can walk into a shop and just ask for something without having to, go over it in my mind and all this. So.
So what makes you feel Canadian when you only spent several years growing up in Canada? What made you feel that move?
So I came back frequently with my family. So we'd come skiing. My brother would also come frequently during his university years to Montreal, all this. So it's not like we had no connection physically to Canada. I mean, I would frequently come back. I remember once we went on a school trip, exactly to Montreal, and I was so excited to show my classmates, all these Canadian places. I remember I convinced us to go for lunch at Saint-Hubert, and I always had this deep connection. I remember even my brother entered in a competition at the consulate in Boston, and he won an award for a comic representing Canadian values. I mean, so we always had this connection to Canada, and it was kind of an intrinsic part of, our household and our family and all this.
What do you think of Putin, and do you prefer to live in a liberal democracy?
I don't think it's really my place to comment on any political matters. I don't think it's within the purview of this conference or really relevant.
A silly question, perhaps. Have you seen the Americans?
Yeah, I have seen it. So, I mean, my parents have also seen it. It was odd watching it, right? Because on one hand, you can relate to some things. On the other hand, it's Hollywood with murders and shooting, and it's completely unrealistic. Some parts were a bit tricky because you feel emotionally, you can see the struggles that people go through and all this. I think that's why my parents also said they enjoyed watching it, because they kind of at least portrayed this sense of patriotism and kind of connection. I mean, it was a good show, but it misses a lot of the realities of kind of what going through all this means for people on a personal level. Not really. I mean, they're just characters. So, yeah.
Alexander, do you have a citizenship document on you was? Without like hiding your, yeah, can we take
I'd-
a look? Do you wanna hold it up for us? You just get that?
No, this.
Sorry, you've had it, but now it's.
No, I mean, yeah, I've had this for a year since the last hearing. So that's just, yes, I get to keep it. That's the distinction.
Yeah. I think it is, sorry, step up right here, I'll give you a second.
Okay, good.
I'm not-
Is that enough?
I would say to those who don't think this is the right decision, think that the sense of the law message from national security.
I mean, what message?
We spoke to retired strategic analyst with CSIS, and he said that he doesn't believe your brother, you and your brother knew what was going on. Said that this is a dangerous message to send out, that national security really doesn't matter. It's okay to come to our country and spy. Kids are going to get the privileges and others.
I mean, first of all, I think it has a little bit of a shallow interpretation of what it really means. I really doubt anybody seriously thinks I'm a threat to national security. Like I said, it's politically driven. How would I be a threat in any way, right? On the other end, like you said, people coming and having their children, it's similarly, people don't go and have their kids because they think, oh, it'll be fine. People have children because they want a family. They want to, have their own lives and all this, and I really don't think it factors into people's decisions about where to go. And in terms of sending a message, again, if people commit crimes, charge them for it in the court of law. Tying kind of immigration, citizenship to all these issues, I think, is not the right way to go about it.
I know you spoke about your relationship with your parents. I'm sorry, I can't recall if you talked about what they think of this today. They're aware?
Yeah, they're aware of it.
Their reaction?
So I mean, like I said, they've been very understanding of my situation, and they're also relieved that kind of my ordeal with all this is over. So I would say, yeah, they're happy.
Did they ever express remorse, like they felt sorry for what they did and what that side and caused you all troubles?
So yes, I mean, that's one of the difficulties we all faced. After the whole ordeal, it's not always easy to come to terms with everything happened. There's always the difficulty that, I've faced a lot of problems, partially a result of their choices. I mean, similarly, their parents themselves didn't see them for years, so it's difficult. So it was kind of a point of contention in terms of why we do the things we do. But ultimately, people have their beliefs, and kind of you have to have something to live for. And their sense of patriotism in doing good and trying to kind of increase understanding of other countries help them kind of to make their decisions. Is that it?
Thank
We're
you.
15 minutes, so that's fine.
Fine. I mean,
So what are you going to do first tomorrow?
tomorrow? Well, probably get some rest first, get some food, celebrate a little bit. I haven't had quite enough of a chance to just relax. I mean, like I said, this has been such a stressful experience for the last 10 years. Before I even think of doing anything else, I think I need a break. I don't want to be reading legal documents and judgments and stressing about what comes next. I just need, a little bit of time just to step back and have some peace and quiet.
What was the Canadian food?
Like poutine, and, all the Tim Hortons, all the regular stuff.
So this is the best present from Canada.
I mean, arguably I should have never had to go through any of this, so I can't say it's a present, but it's definitely a relief, and it's good to have it, before the end of the year, so I can start 2020, the new decade, with this behind me.